Non c'è problema, ci sono. Fortunatamente avevo soltanto un minuto in sopra così. Buon pomeriggio.
State entrando lì? C'è un distaccamento, ma siete secondati? Va bene. Io mi metto di là un po' così siamo più distribuiti, se qualcuno vuole approfittare.
Okay, so yeah, I think you can hear me well. Welcome back for those who were joining the conference this morning. I hope you had a nice networking lunch. Very nice to see many people also coming back, and also those who just arrived. For those who were not here, my name is Alteo Valentini. I am the president, the chair of the board of O Digital. And today, well, this afternoon, I just have the big pleasure to give my warmest welcome to the launch event of the 15th edition of the O Digital Weeks campaign. We will have a very nice afternoon together, focusing on the campaign and having also some nice activity to interact. So I don't take so much time. I will just give the floor to our CEO, Peter Pawłowski, for the rest of the introduction. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to welcome you. My name is Peter Pawłowski, CEO of O Digital. And for those who weren't here for the morning, I would welcome you to the Microsoft Technology Center, and once again thank Microsoft for hosting our event or events today, because we already started the program this morning talking about local and regional approaches to digital strategies, digital inclusion strategies, and their implementation. But we are here this afternoon, as Alteo already said, to open our All Digital Weeks annual awareness raising campaign. And our logo or slogan is enhance your digital skills. I think it's not even necessary to explain why we have chosen this title and why it is so important for everyone to enhance their digital skills in a rapidly changing digital environment. And why do we need All Digital Weeks campaign? There are some shocking figures coming from the DESI index, the Digital Economy and Society Index, like 44% of Europeans still lack of basic digital skills in those digital competence areas that are described in the DIGCOM framework. When it comes to the elderly population, this number is obviously even higher. 63% of people aged between 55 74 lack basic digital skills. But 30% of internet users don't have basic digital safety skills, which is also very important when we talk about cybersecurity and safer internet. Only 26% of Europeans check truthfulness of information that they find online on the internet. And only 15% of employed persons have received ICT education. So that's why we every year now for the 15 years, we are organizing an awareness raising campaign on digital competencies. It's really one of the major and I would say most important awareness raising campaigns on digital skills, in particular for inclusion, empowerment, and employability. It's organized by the All Digital Network. So together with our member organizations, it's a pan-European campaign, really across Europe, reaching more than 30 countries. And since 2010, when we started to organize our campaigns, we have reached and engaged and trained 1.5 million people just to get online or to further enhance their basic and as well more advanced digital skills. The campaign is getting bigger and bigger. Now we are having a 3-week campaign. Last year we started to extend our campaign, or actually 2 years ago, but we are covering a 3-week period starting yesterday from the 13th of May until the 31st of May. The campaign is co-funded by the European Commission through our operating grant and different projects. And we are involving plenty of partners. As I mentioned, our member organizations are involved in the campaign. This year, we have engaged 22 national coordinators among our members who are coordinating national promotional and organizational activities in their countries. And very importantly, we have 19 strategic partners, other European level organizations, our mutual member partners who are supporting our initiatives. I will show them in the following slides. We have mottos, we have certain focus areas for our All Digital Weeks campaign. This year, quite many. We are talking about and organizing programs and events around digital skills for employment, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We are also tackling issues related to equity, diversity, and inclusion. We keep supporting the implementation of the digital competence framework and its possible further development, and also try to support the implementation or the realization of a common approach for European digital skills certificates. We are also focusing on cybersecurity and safer internet. I think it's a crucial point when we analyze the different digital competencies. But at the same time, digital media literacy and disinformation is equally important. And we also promote the combination of digital skills competencies with other competencies for environment, sustainability, green competencies, entrepreneurial competencies. Also digital skills for specific sectors. So we also identify and check how digital skills can contribute to different sectorial needs. And we are also talking about now, importantly, the AI, generative AI, especially in education. As I mentioned, the campaign is supported by the European Union, and I already thank again for the support of our corporate partner Microsoft. And here is the slide where I can show, and I'm happy to show those 22 national partners who are all digital members and are engaged in promoting the campaign in those countries. I think it really ensures that we are able to reach those numbers that we target, really hundreds, if not thousands of events. And our target number is, again, 100 1,000 participants engaged during these 3 weeks of activities. And here are our strategic partners who are promoting our network and promoting the All Digital Weeks campaign at European level through their networks and constituencies. Some practicalities. Anyone can join the All Digital Weeks campaign. We have a campaign website, alldigitalweeks.eu. You simply register and you put your activities on the list of activities. You can please visit the website if you would like to have more information about it. It's very simple, and this is the result. I mean, it's really a collection of activities that are happening in Europe during this week, and you can find your own activities on the map, but more importantly, anything which is organized at European or local regional levels. And please spread the word about the campaign through your social media channels and using our hashtags and social media channels. Here and also on the All Digital Weeks website, you can find already a list of events that are organized by All Digital or by national or strategic partners during the next 3 weeks. We are here on the first week. We are on the 14th of May, already the second conference that we are devoting to the topic, but there will be other interesting events and activities coming up. Every week we have really a number of events online, of course, and free to attend, and please spread the word. And I would like to raise your interest in exploring these activities, these events, and joining them. And we will continue during the 3rd week of the campaign. So we are trying to focus a lot of activities during this period. So if you need any more information, please feel free to contact us. I would like to, if Andrea can look at me, introduce you the campaign manager, Andrea Bedorin, communications manager of All Digital. He and our team are more than happy to answer your questions. And now back to this conference, and you have the program in your folder. So we will start with keynote speakers, and then after them we will organize a panel discussion with the participation of invited stakeholders. Among of the keynote speakers, very first of all, I would like to invite Georgi Dimitrov to the stage. Please have a seat with us here. Georgi is head of unit of the digital education unit of the European Commission, DG EAC. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation and also for your continued collaboration and support with All Digital and our network. The next keynote speaker will be Jeremy Rollison from Microsoft, and I'm not sure if Jeremy is already with us, but he will definitely join in a few moments. And the 3rd keynote speaker will be Elisa Gambardella, who is the president of the Lifelong Learning Platform. Thank you very much, Elisa, for accepting our invitation. So in this, among the keynote speakers, we have representation of the European Commission, the corporate sector, and the civil society. So without, this is what's coming up next, a panel discussion among different stakeholders who are already in the room. I will introduce them after 1 hour, after the keynote session. And I think this is the time to get back to Georgi. And Georgi, please, the floor is yours. And your presentation is already here. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Peter, and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, congratulations on the achievements of your milestones so far. I was quite impressed to see 1.5 million people so far, and running this for the 15th times in a row is not a small feat. So congratulations to All Digital and to all the national partners who are probably following this as well. We very much appreciate the work that you're doing. And of course, thank you very much for inviting the Commission to be part of your launch event of the All Digital Weeks. I have to say, two things really struck me while you were going through your slides. First of all, you are way ahead in terms of PowerPoint and developing visuals. So I don't know how to go to my slides now. I'm slightly embarrassed, but I would give it a try. So whoever did that, really well done. And the second thing is that I really like your motto, because your motto is a beautiful evergreener. So you can use it basically every year. And I think you told me that you have used it already more than once. And I say this with a lot of humility, because if you come up with something which is valid year after year after year, then probably you're doing something relevant. I want to talk briefly today about three main parts. So I want to talk about the context that we operate in when it comes to digital education and skills. Secondly, I want to essentially piggyback on some of the data that you showed first, but I will repeat some of it. And so I want to show a bit of evidence. And third, I want to speak about what next, which is your leading question in terms of digital skills. So the context of my work is primarily the Digital Education Action Plan. So I will do here a small survey. Who of you has heard about the Digital Education Action Plan? Can you raise your hand? Thank you. So we have a lot of work to do still, but we can already start with some of you. So first of all, the context in which we operate in terms of policy initiative of the Commission. This slide shows the digital decade, which is really the overarching framework of the Commission when it comes to digital transformation. I will not bother you with all the elements there, which are all of them quite important, but I just want to highlight one aspect, that digital education and digital skills are part of a more general framework of digitalization. And I am repeating this every year because I don't think that has always been the case. In fact, I think that we started to talk a lot about digital skills from the labor market perspective a while ago, and the Commission has done a great job on that, together with our industrial partners, of course. But as time goes by, we are slowly moving more and more into recognition that this part is actually really a mission of education systems to develop digital skills. So just take that message with you, that digital education and skills policy is something which is related to the overall digital agenda of the Commission. There you go, Digital Education Action Plan. Of course, I took the liberty, since I speak, to highlight it big in the center. It doesn't mean that it's so important as opposed to everything else, but it means that it is related to big initiatives such as Next Generation EU, where we had an unprecedented amount of funding going into digital education and skills over the last 3 years, continuing over the next 1 or 2. We have obviously the digital decade. We have strategies such as the Better Internet for Kids and, of course, the European education area. So all of this is linked, even though it might not be intuitively to recognize it at the first sight. There are 2 priorities of the Digital Education Action Plan. We'd like to keep things simple. One is to develop and to support the development of a high-performing digital education ecosystem. And this entails everything from the infrastructure, tools, platforms, increasingly digital education content, which is a very important issue in itself. And then on the other side, what I refer to as the evergreener, where we completely concur with you and your mission, is the need to continuously enhance digital skills. In fact, this is also happens to be the name of the title of the second priority. And we do this with a lot of different implementing actions, including the Digital Education Hub. So what does the data and evidence tell us if we have this context? What does the evidence and data tell us when it comes to digitalization? So first of all, when it comes to the infrastructure and the ecosystem part, I would like to highlight that arguably this data is slightly outdated. So we'll have a new batch of data coming this year. But what you can see there, and it won't be radically different from what will come later, is that there is a great deal of improvement that needs to take place in the digitalization of education and training systems in terms of how equipped and connected schools are. This is one KPI. There is a lot more, but this one is pretty telling. And obviously what you see there is that there are very few countries where you can say that, you know, almost all schools are equipped and connected. And there are very few countries who can say that, and there are very small on top of that. So if you take that out of the sample of the countries in the European Union, you end up with a fairly small number, which is in itself a worrying tendency, because we are talking about AI, and we are talking about, you know, every one of you has a 5G phone, but if you go to the majority of schools, you won't even have 100 megabit. So second point is when it comes to digital skills, and you referred to this in a much nicer graph, the ratio of people with at least basic digital skills is very worrying. And again, what you see here is the kind of, you know, the correlation of those countries which are very, very far advanced and equipped. Interestingly enough, they tend to have also very high level of digital skills. I'm not saying there is a hard correlation here, but there is something that you cannot avoid to observe if you look into the data. Generally speaking, with more than 40% who lack digital skills, this, of course, is a problem in itself, which I think does not need too much of you know, highlighting. And then, of course, if you dig down deeper into the data, you can, of course, go into the different subsets in terms of age, in terms of socioeconomic gaps. You can also look at the reality of the myth of the digital native, that in fact, it is not at all the case that just because you happen to be, you know, the age of your campaign, which is 15, just because you are 15, that you are digitally native. I mean, you might be digitally native, but you might be very far away from digitally skilled. And this is a myth that requires a lot of debunking time and again. But the data is very, very evident on this as well. Now, in terms of the what next, I want to just highlight two pieces of recent initiatives that we have worked on and put forward last year, and which were adopted by the Council. So what is very important to retain is that these are Council recommendations. So these are initiatives which the member states, all of them have adopted based on a proposal of the European Commission, but this is very much in the ownership of the member states. And this is a difference than just being pure initiative of the European Commission. The first one is a Council recommendation on the key enabling factors for successful digital education. It ties into our first strategic priority, which is to enable high-performing digital education ecosystems, to invest in resources, to invest in infrastructure, in connectivity, in platforms, in tools, of course, in safe platforms, in technological sovereignty and the like, but to enable a level playing field for everyone so that you can, first of all, have a chance to succeed and you have an access to it. And this slide presents some of the, let's say, some of the highlights of why that is important. And I mentioned already some of it, so I won't go through it. Let me just mention to you what the member states decided is quite important to do going forward. First, that there is a need really to address this in a national strategic context. Often, member states have different departmental strategies, but they do not necessarily put this into one national strategy, and that they don't do even between the different sectors of education. I'm not talking about different ministries. They don't even link the primary to the secondary to the higher. So there are just a few that don't do that, but it would be good to let's say, go ahead and have a more coherent strategic approach. Very important, and here I think this event shows it nicely, that you need to have the civil society, the NGOs, and the private sector on board. especially the private sector, is super important when it comes to the digitalization of schools, both because it is the supply side and also because it has a great deal of responsibility to do this in a safe and responsible way. And there is also a lot of work that needs to be done, but it is important also to overcome some sort of skepticism sometimes between public and private. And then it is very important to go in a targeted way when you invest, because the easiest thing to do when you want to spend money is to buy a lot of computers. We have seen that over time and again. And I mean, you can buy now iPads or you can buy the latest whatever device you have. But if you don't implement that into a pedagogically meaningful way in your school, you might tick one box, but maybe not the rest of it. So on our side, the Commission has been invited by the member states to develop guidelines on digital education content. This is a very important issue as education moves to the digital space and content gets created natively on digital platforms. And you can just think about it if you imagine what happens if you think about a textbook being rethought from scratch. It is not about digitizing the textbook, but it's about thinking it basically as if you were start from the beginning. And there is a lot of important questions that need to be asked. One simple one is, what are you doing with an AI which creates something like this? That's a very big question in itself. We would also like to enhance the transparency of the data availability when it comes to digitalization in Europe. I quoted here data from 2017 and 18, not with a lot of pride, but because that's the latest I have. And we have a problem to solve there, because if we want to cover digitalization in education, we need to have faster cycles, including on the data and the transparency. And also, we have been requested to work towards supporting effective and safe and inclusive use of AI in education. And in fact, it was yesterday in the Council of Ministers where the ministers of the EU discussed in a policy debate, which was public, which is why I'm mentioning it. They discussed AI in education, and there was a full debate with all the ministers there. And that was quite fascinating to see how fast they are advancing in terms of thinking. And we are very much welcoming this, of course. Second point, and I would like to finish with that, is the Council recommendation on digital skills. So you will remember that's the second priority. This responds to the second priority of the Digital Education Action Plan. Again, a piece of work that addresses a number of gaps. I mentioned some of them. Let me just say what were some of the main recommendations to the member states. First, to start early and to think about digital skills in a age-appropriate way. To also work with children early, not necessarily with any digital devices. You can do that with unplugged activities. Develop things like logic and computational thinking without any devices or screens, for that matter. The need to promote and provide quality education in informatics is very important when we speak about foundational scientific-based knowledge and digital skills. Often digital skills are very application-based, whereas important, let's say, understanding of the phenomena which are underlying digitalization, or let's say artificial intelligence, what is an algorithm, how this information works, these type of things, they can be greatly enhanced by foundational scientific knowledge in things like informatics. So we are going to support this as well. We have also seen the attention on recruiting and retaining specialized teachers in informatics and computer science. This is a very, very important topic and not an easy one, because obviously there is some sort of competition between I would say the private sector and people who are very good in computer science. It's kind of obvious, but it is very important to develop and retain teachers in this field. And then foster certification of digital skills. One aspect that we're going to do also on this one as a recommendation to the Commission is to develop guidelines on informatics. And in fact, just last week, we have closed our call for an expert group on informatics, and the week before, we closed our call on digital education content. So all of this, what I'm telling you here, is really very much work in progress. One final thing on what next is that, in fact, every one of you, even if you are not familiar with the Digital Education Action Plan, can say something to the Commission in terms of what next. And I invite you to do that because we have just launched the review of this action plan, which started 4 years ago. And we're now in the mid kind of phase of it because it runs until 27, according to the policy and financial cycle of the EU. And we invite all the stakeholders to share your views in shaping policy going forward in order to help enhance digital skills and, let's say, bring societies forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Georgi, and please stay here or yeah, you can even sit if you like. Would you like to take a question or two from the audience?
If we have a minute or two, happy to do so. If not,
if you have any questions for Georgi, this is the time to ask. If not, I have one.
Sure.
You just mentioned this midterm review. Yeah. So there are a number of actions in the Digital Education Action Plan. Some have been implemented already, some are being implemented, maybe some to go. What is the biggest success so far? What are you most proud of in terms of achievements already?
So I mean. I'm not really proud of only one, if I may, but I'm very proud of the level of engagement we have achieved with the member states. I am saying this because, as you know, in the European Union, it is the member states who run the education policy. And it is very difficult to engage them and to have them commit to something. So I'm quite proud that, first of all, we organized a structured dialogue on digital education and skills with all the 27 member states individually over the year 2022, where we went into all the different aspects and needs and challenges. And then we took all of this into the 2 council recommendations, which eventually the member states also adopted. Yeah. So I'm quite proud on that side. And then there are a lot of other smaller things where I can go into details, where, for example, we had a very nice action on supporting young girls and of age of 12 to 18 to develop digital skills. And this action had a target of 40,000 by 27, and it was achieved actually still 2024. So I'm kind of proud of that, but it is smaller compared to some of the others.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being with us and for your contributions.
Thank you. And I sit here.
Yeah, yes.
Or there. So,
wherever you.
I prefer this.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, thanks.
So the next keynote speaker, I already introduced you, Jeremy, during my first sentences. Thank you very much again for you personally as well to host our event today and your contributions and support of All Digital and our activities. I would like to present and welcome Jeremy Rollison, Head of EU Policy, Senior Director, European Government Affairs, Microsoft. The floor is yours and your slides are here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to everyone here in All Digital for the opportunity to be able to speak with you. We're happy to host groups like this, and we're very excited about the partnerships and local partners that we're working with in this space, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. I also wanted to say, I thought those were really good slides from the European Commission.
Yeah.
Those were some of the better ones that I've seen, so well done. I don't think you need to apologize at all for that. I hope we don't let you down now with some of the Microsoft slides. Could have used AI to make that maybe a little better, but well, we're doing that all the time. But I work upstairs and I manage our policy team in the office. So Georgi and his colleagues keep us busy in the policy space on digital topics. And it's another example of where we're trying to partner with local stakeholders across the spectrum. Our business has expanded, and we're really excited about what our customers are doing in these different spaces with digital technologies. And where I'm more excited now than in previous mandates even is looking ahead. I think, skilling is realer than ever before, if you ask me. It's always been something we've talked about, the importance of computer science and the importance of digital to more and more industries. But now we're seeing it across all of our customer segments and we're seeing it across all levels of even the citizenry. My team makes fun of me because I like to use examples of my mother in this space. And I think the pandemic, which was referenced in the context of the RRF, and we spoke about this last year at All Digital, that there are different types of skills. We focus a lot on the coding initiatives that we want to drive and the data science and the like. But, we also want to keep in mind cyber hygiene skills. We want to keep in mind my mother who needs to learn how to use video conferencing to stay connected with family and work. Hairdressers is another example I like of getting closer to digital technologies that were really important during the pandemic to keep businesses open, to keep customers coming. So the spectrum of opportunity across the skilling space goes from the very sophisticated to some of the very basics, and the numbers do speak for themselves. We're optimistic about it, mainly because of work through partners like All Digital and others, and we're seeing it at very local levels in Europe. It doesn't have to be a boil the ocean approach, but there are local partners who are much closer to the needs of specific communities that we want to work with. And it is one of these messages that we've shared before that no one can do this alone. We have a big role to play, and you'd mentioned that in terms of technology. We see a lot, we can share a lot in terms of shortages we've noticed, new skills and technological trends, but we can't do that without governments, and we certainly can't do it without our local partners across Europe and even the world. So I'm giving a keynote address. There's one slide to mention that. Upstairs, we look at these policies across the board, and I said, these days we're spending a lot of time focused on AI, but my team captures everything from trade policy to consumer policy to sustainability policy, cybersecurity policy, and skilling is coming up across all of those contexts. And in fact, everyone I think is aware, and people in this room are probably keenly aware of, the gap that has been highlighted in the Commission reports that were referenced. I think it was DESI data that we cite, and Peter mentioned that earlier today. There's a huge opportunity and cost here to be aware of. Some of this data is arguably even a little dated, not too dated, but it's still relevant for the gap that we're all trying to address. And it's something that, again, is a collective approach that we need your help, and I hope everyone can work together in that same fashion. How do we expand that opportunity? A lot of this also comes down to access to the skills in the first place. We're very proud of some of the new learning pathways we've set up, many of which are free, and there are certifications and micro-credentials that are emerging, and that's from everything for the most sophisticated coding languages that are at the cutting edge to even some of the more cyber hygiene type basics that I think everyone across Europe has different sets of needs. In different sectors, this is more pronounced than others. But it requires a lot of work at the educational level. So we mentioned teachers in that context. We mentioned the interactions with students. Gergi was mentioning schools and where there's equipment needs, there's different skillings, training the trainers in this context. But it goes much broader than just curricula. And I think it goes much broader than just young students. This is a lifelong learning initiative. We're seeing this pop up quite prominently across our customer segments. And even in Microsoft, in terms of hiring needs, there is a gap there. It is hard to find the talent necessary for cyber skills. We're going to talk in a minute about green skills and sustainability, where the EU has also had, I think, a lot of leadership, both on the regulatory side, but even on the industrial side. To maintain that, green skills are also digital skills, and we're going to need to explore it across the spectrum. Microsoft has been, I think, at the forefront of much of this, seeing where technology is going across the globe. Much of that has been echoed in the presentation you just heard. It's been echoed throughout this commission's mandate. I think it was reinforced by the pandemic. With the burgeoning of AI, we're talking more and more about, of course, the challenges that we don't want to minimize. We're super optimistic about that technology, but we don't want to minimize any of the risks. And there will be a number of those. You mentioned disinformation, but the others across cybersecurity, which is what we do here locally in Brussels and with the team upstairs. This fits underneath the banner that was mentioned earlier. But most recently, and there's a meeting next week, so it's rather timely, we were very happy to commit to the EU Cyber Skills Academy. This was something that was focused much more on the cyber skilling space specifically and the needs that we have there. And as we see, we like to call it the attack vector expand, as more businesses become digital, as more businesses are incorporating all of these concerns as your assembly lines become more digital. Of course, there's more attack points that you can hit there. But do you have the right technology in place and the right decision makers in place to be aware of that? This was a demonstration of our commitment to the Commission's specific pledge, which was around cybersecurity skills. And we wanted to capture something that we could measure to align to the initiative. So I'm proud of these numbers, and we've hit our goal ahead of schedule, and we'll continue to do this. But in no way is this reflect the only thing we're doing in that skilling space. I think you got the question earlier, what you're proud of. I think the thing that I was most proud of is looking at spaces like this and proud of what we've committed to, but also proud to hear partners of ours mention the work they're doing in their own pledging commitments, cooperating with partners like Microsoft. So it's not stopping here. But this is a space, and as we've learned through security challenges that we've even had recently, we're doubling down on. And the talent shortage and workforce needs there are something the Commission's recognized, something we've recognized, and again, a good example of where we're all working together in the same direction. It wouldn't be a presentation from Microsoft without a mention of AI, and I think you're going to learn more about that today. And there's a demo that I'm excited for all of you to see as well. We're excited also about generative AI. I think when we talk about AI, I'm sometimes a bit too concerned that we're focused mostly on the generative AI advancements that have occurred over the past 18 months. AI is much bigger than that, but make no mistake, there's a lot of excitement around what can be done in a generative AI context. We've set up learning pathways here that you're going to learn a bit more about as we see this as part of the good news. As much as there is a shortage on one side in a cyber context or a green digital skills context, we're also really optimistic of where AI can mitigate some of that. And there already are emerging examples of where certain skills that were needed pre-AI may be now able to be complemented with AI, where we can move faster with smaller teams thanks to what artificial intelligence is bringing. But without the right awareness of that, without the right familiarity of what's needed, it won't be successful. So some of the learning pathways that we've launched, I think, reflect that, and you're going to see more and more announcements in that space. Okay. Maybe next one. This is the next frontier. For us, we're very, very optimistic about AI technology. We see this as powering economies and societies of the future, and it's going to be increasingly present in sectors across all of these different customer verticals and every aspect of life. We don't want to minimize any of the challenges there, and there are significant challenges and risks. Technology in the wrong hands can, of course, be misused. We're right now very fixated on elections that are coming up and the disinformation angle and proliferation of content we need to recognize the role that AI plays in that space. But we also need to recognize, I think, where AI can help that. And again, without having the right skills to know how to harness that, and I would even capture under this banner, being able to recognize disinformation. It's not a coding language that you need to learn to do that, but we need to look for the type of markers to know when we're dealing with a deep fake and the like. Right now, we're spending a lot of time in this election context this year. More people will be voting in elections than ever before in history. That's the US, it's the EU, it's India, it's all over. So we've made a lot of commitments in this space, particularly recognizing where AI could present a challenge to democratic norms in terms of the disinformation spread. Big priority for the European Commission, and it's another example of partnerships that we've struck and are really keen to be pushing in the same direction. We're seeing more and more of our customers get excited about this technology and hiring accordingly. We've also seen them highlight the same gap that the Commission has mentioned before. Once again, we're optimistic that we can contribute to that space and make sure our customers, get the talent that they need, and we're all pushing in the same direction on that. But make no mistake, we see this as the next big space, and it does tap into some of the cloud computing skills that we've already launched before. It's created new paradigms and new ways of learning that we're super excited about. So AI is going to be part of the solution and part of the foundation to much of this industrial growth, but you're going to need to have that same skilling emphasis. I think I wanted to include this both because it's one of our, it's a busier slide. I think it could be a little simplified, but it does show the different types of skills that are needed across an organization. A lot of times when you think about digital skills, and I'm not saying this is the case amongst this group, but it is everything from some of the basics to some of the more sophisticated learnings. There's a much different set of skills that a CEO might need in this space than a data scientist working in a dedicated data science team on the cutting edge of the latest coding technologies and the like. And even their customers need to have the skills to understand what they're consuming, how to use these tools. Companies like ours are actually organizing ourselves differently to make sure that we're prioritizing education to customers to whom we're selling these products and services. No one's going to use something that they don't know how to use. And you're seeing companies around the world reflect this in their own hiring patterns. So training the trainers becomes part of a responsibility that we have. But when you're thinking about public sector digital transformation and opportunities around AI, how do you entice a customer without understanding what the needs are in the first place and whether they have the skills? This goes across the board. And finally, I think the EU can be proud of its leadership in a sustainability space, both from this mandate and moving forward. When we think about commitments to renewables, and I think the energy crisis was a good reminder of some of the emphasis the EU had placed on that and the importance of meeting these objectives and doubling down on some of the strategies around renewables and the like. AI, we think, can be a part of the solution there. You're going to hear me say it again. Digital skills are important to know. It's easy to say that AI is important, but what does that mean in practice? And we're seeing more and more exciting ways of either automating reporting obligations, automating efficiencies that can be identified in emissions schemes and the like. For green skills to be successful, you're going to have a digital element to that, and arguably even vice versa. We used to talk a lot in this mandate about the twin transition. It still is there, but I think it's really one transition. You can't have a green transition without the same digital transition. And I would argue you're going to struggle to have your digital transition without the energy needs that are going to have to come from a variety of different sources. And I think that's been validated by even the experiences over the past couple of years. So this was a little bit of a whirlwind tour. I don't have a QR code like you did to make sure that people could see this. Usually we do. But I am available to answer any questions you might have, and really wanted to just say thank you again to All Digital and all of the work that we're doing with all of you, because it's not something that we can do alone. I'm focused on the policy front. We have colleagues focused much more at the local level and the partnerships, but across our business now, I think we're leaning into this space from the executive level on down, and really keen to see the like-minded goals. Thank you. There's one.
Yes, Jarkko. Just a moment, the microphone is coming.
About the digital gaps, although the data were quite old, but they're talking about the basic digital skills. Don't you think that these data are inaccurate, because you were talking about completely new set of basic digital skills or digital skills? So don't you think that the gap is even bigger than the charts are showing?
I think it's a fair way to look at that potentially. I think you could flip it around and say potentially it's even, more positive than that, depending on how you use the statistics. I think I was in a commission meeting recently where they were saying, well, if you've had this many learners that have gone through your processes, and company B has the same story and company C has the same story, why do we still have a gap? If you've skilled up 100,000 people, why don't we see that emerging in the workforce? And I think that's where it does get important to remember that there are different sets of skills. You can follow a learning pathway that will translate into a direct job if it's very specific to that unique role, but it's more skills that will translate to any job. The skilling and the learning pathways that we've established have helped people be better at their job, regardless of whether they're working in a public sector or a hospital or an assembly line or even upstairs in a policy office. So I see where you're coming from with that. It could be bigger, but it really depends on how you're measuring that. If it's basic core competencies of, how to use some of the, if it's the whole scale, it becomes hard to measure, no doubt about it. No doubt. I do think, though, when we look at where we've struggled to find, and not just Microsoft, but the Commission has recognized this from feedback they've had from other players, and we see it in our customers, when you're launching vacancies for certain cybersecurity roles, why isn't there as much talent to choose from as we would like to see? And why are some jurisdictions better at that than others? That's where the learnings can also be achieved. So I think your question is fair, and how you measure these things matters a lot. But I do think we can confirm that there is a shortage of relevant skills, particularly pertaining to some of these next frontier items. Cybersecurity comes up a lot. I think the green skills comes up. And if I attach digital to that, I think that's another space where we do see a bit of a gap. And it's a fair question. It's a fair question, but I want to stay optimistic.
Yeah. Thank you. Mine is not really a question, when the audience runs full speech. Yeah. Now, speaking about like misinformation, disinformation, fake news, because lately, I always hear people talking about the evil aspects of AI, speaking about fake news, etc. But wouldn't be like better to start from scratch, like helping people understand that from the beginning of the internet, they have to think about what they see, not just thinking about, oh, okay, AI is bringing, evil in the world, and people are becoming more and more stupid because they don't understand what they see. But on April 1st, on April Fool, they always, criticize what they see. They always, think, oh, maybe this is not true. But they have to understand that this can happen every day, on the internet, not just AI. So what like a big tech company like yours think about, like not considering just AI, but everything related to fake?
I really appreciate the comment, because I think, we've perhaps answering on my own personal behalf instead of Microsoft, which I will. I don't think that gets enough emphasis sometimes in the policy solutions to this space, because I think it requires a longer term solution that might not always have the same political popularity. I mean, we need to be educating across a generation on exactly the same type of things to look for, that we need to create that critical thinking visor to understand what you're looking for, ask the right questions about, what's the motive here? Where might there be a bias? all of these different questions that I was even taught 20 years ago before anybody was talking about AI. I think it's a huge part of it. And I agree with you, perhaps, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I don't think that's emphasized quite enough. We certainly emphasize it at Microsoft, and part of our commitments in the context of elections is also the awareness campaigns that we're doing to demonstrate more from a technological side as well, the type of markers that would be flagged in a deep fake context. How do you know if you're engaging with something that was AI generated or is real or not? There are educational things we can do from a technological standpoint, but at the more basic level, just making sure that students from a very, very early age are asking themselves the right questions and not taking everything at face value. I think it's more important than ever in an AI era for the challenges we just mentioned, but I also think it was important 30 years ago when you were reading newspapers, regardless of where they were. And, there's always a degree of subjectivity to this. So we get a little philosophical with that, but I think it has to be a huge, huge, huge part of the solution. I just think it's a much more longer term commitment than something we can commit to solving next year. But I think it's arguably the most important part.
Thank you very much. And once again, thank you very much for your presentation and answering the questions. And now I would like to invite Elisa Gambardella, President of the Lifelong Learning Platform, to the stage. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I did fear a lot the challenge about presentation, so I will just go without. Thanks a lot, Peter, and thanks All Digital for having me, and also for having the Lifelong Learning Platform as a partner in the All Digital Weeks. It's such an important, influential event that we're very proud to be able to contribute to. Also, thank you for the fundamental and timely focus of the All Digital Weeks campaign this year: digital democracy, civic participation, and social responsibility, the impact of artificial intelligence and digital skills for employment, entrepreneurship, and innovation really reflect the width and the breadth of the approach, a holistic approach to education policies and lifelong learning that the Lifelong Learning Platform tries to promote, and does so on a daily basis thanks to our members. Maybe not all of you know indeed who we are. The LLP is the European umbrella organization for European civil society organizations working in education. We gather more than 40 member organizations that cover altogether all the three sectors of education: formal, non-formal, and informal, and all stakeholders. So we represent learners, practitioners, education institutions, and parents, among others. So what do we advocate for when it comes to the digital dimension of education and participation? Is for the digital to be a support for boosting opportunities, for participation and access, and therefore to be accessible from all points of view, and to be democratically governed and implemented, serving the public interest and social inclusion. So this is the standpoint from which I will try to bring some messages to this audience, and hopefully spark some debate or questions for the coming days and debates. But first, let me take a step back and see where we stand today. So obviously, it was already mentioned, this is the end of the European Year of Skills, maybe the beginning of the European Decade of Skills, as it was mentioned, the concluding event of the European Year of Skills, hopefully so. And it is also the eve of the European elections, obviously. So it is a fundamental moment for matching, finally, ambitious visions for societies and the actions to sustain them, obviously. And we do have ideas for that, but first we need to tackle some issues that are there. Because today, this is a perception I would like to share with you, we live in a society that suffers from strabismus when it comes to digitalization. On the one hand, we see and are excited about the high-speed train taking to uncharted territories thanks to digitalization. And on the other hand, we have so many people who don't even know what that train looks like. So if you think, I would like to invite you to think for a moment about your families of origins maybe, or your acquaintances, and think if really each and every person in this group or these groups know how to send an email, make an online payment, let alone understand an algorithm. I'm drawing attention to this based on 5 main observations, which of course do not aim to be comprehensive, but will underpin my messages later on. The first one is that, of course, it was mentioned already a lot. It's obvious, I think, for this audience, but all spheres of life, as well as policy across all sectors, politics itself, are massively affected by what's happening in the digital realm. Secondly, the narratives on competitiveness are more and more influenced by the speed of the developments in the digital field. And related to that, the development and use of digital tools by the private sector is advancing at a much faster pace than what communities, including learning communities and schools and individuals, have been able to keep up with. Moreover, democratic processes and participation are more and more influenced by the digital realm, while, and it was mentioned in a way, media literacy and critical thinking competencies become more hardly acquired by Europeans. All the while, 44% of Europeans lack basic digital skills, and this means moving a mouse, replying to an email, making an online payment. And in some areas in Europe, we know that access to digital infrastructure is not to be taken for granted. The education sector witnessed this very well during the pandemic, but we should also have it in mind when we hear the claim that all essential services or public services should be digitalized, when in fact this would leave behind so many people. So this leaves us with what tends to be a competitiveness-obsessed and labor market-oriented approach to digital education sometimes, that very often organizations such as the LLP and All Digital as well try to counter, in the sense that it carries the risk that we forget that if not well governed, digitalization might exacerbate inequalities. Now, taking stock of all of this, and I didn't mean to lead you to a bleak scenario, we're moving to the positive part. What is that we can do better from the point of view of the lifelong learning platform? First of all, invest massively in digital basic skills as a key driver for education policies for the next mandate. This is part of the European Council recommendation that was mentioned by Georgi already, that we fully support, and we're ready to support also in implementation terms. Because surely our economy and society needs qualified professionals in fields such as cybersecurity. And the European Year of Skills put that in the spotlight, and rightly so. But first and foremost, we need all residents in Europe to be able to interact with each other with the minimum common floor of competencies when it comes to using digital tools. This is a responsibility of the whole society, and it cannot be left on the learners only. Speaking of responsibilities that belong to policymakers, we must question ourselves if that would be enough for a society that aims at being composed of individuals and citizens and not only of working machines. For that, we also need all residents in Europe to understand, make sense, navigate, and find their place in the complexity of nowadays societies. And this is an essential prerequisite, of course, to be able to actively participate in society and democracy. And this is leading me to my next point, which is that we need, along with basic digital skills, we also need to invest and promote digital citizenship education. Digital citizenship education is the acknowledgement, basic acknowledgement, that citizenship education cannot address anymore essential questions about participation in society if we do not include the digital dimension of it. Therefore, it couples basic digital skills that we've been discussing so far with critical thinking, media literacy, among other transversal competencies that are so crucial to the development of citizenship education and the ability to actively participate. And it ultimately results in an education that empowers individuals, not only to passively receive, but to understand, interact, and take action also in the digital aspects of nowadays society and democracy. In fact, we shall see the digital dimension of citizenship education as a foundational one when we develop curricula and learning pathways to support democratic participation and the ability of residents in Europe to claim and enjoy their rights and to actively contribute to their communities. So I would like to invite you to reflect on the concept and conceptualization of citizenship education as an evolving one. And in this sense, I believe that the framework offered by global citizenship education, which bridges education to environmental sustainability, the more classic citizenship education, as well as the sense of social justice, interconnectedness between communities and the socioeconomic model that governs them, to also include the digital dimension. This is only a conceptual framework, of course, but I believe that it can offer a direction for when we elaborate policy and when we try to innovate in practice, thanks to our members and not only, also for the private sectors, to see how the world of tomorrow can work in an interconnected way that really bridges all the different challenges that we are discussing today and more broadly in society. It carries a transformative potential because it is delivered in a way that is empowering for the learner and therefore transforms and moves beyond and goes further than civic education as it is traditionally understood to finally lead us to the world of today for learners of all ages, of course. Practitioners have already started innovating methodologies and curricula to promote digital citizenship education. And among them, of course, there's all the members of All Digital and also All Digital itself, obviously, also together with the LLP, because we have a project called iBooks that the LLP is running together with All Digital, Learning for Wellbeing Foundation, CMA, and UCAN, other members of the LLP, and that we also hold the training on during the LLP days, which are happening in only a month, and to which you're all invited on bridging the digital gap. Because this is knowledge that, of course, needs to be acquired also by practitioners and not only by learners as such. So, collecting practices from the ground, developing pilots and innovative practices and projects like the one that I just mentioned, supporting transferability of group practices and the building of the transnational learning community, including learners, practitioners, parents, institutions, is a big part of our work, obviously. But also we do it because we like to try to influence and be part of the conversation, at least, when it comes to evidence-informed policy making. So in this sense, I have just a couple more reflections to share with you. And one concerns the AI Act and the Digital Services and Markets Act, which have been undeniably momentous decisions which will give long-lasting impact on education and training policies. We deeply appreciate the regulatory approach that was adopted by the EU, especially compared to other continents, but we also believe that the time is not over for participating in these processes. It is only the beginning. So I would like to make this an invitation also for the civil society organizations that are present to stay active and stay vocal in these processes, and especially in the implementation phase, to make sure that what is too often, let's be honest, perceived by many civil society organizations that are not working technically on these topics as a too complex legislation, too complex terminology, actually they can take the ownership of these processes, which are obviously, you know this better than I do, gonna influence and shape all the policies in education and practice in education and training, take ownership of these processes, engage with them, and really be part of this conversation. And obviously not to leave the knowledge and the power, therefore, in the hands of a few actors only. In this sense, while there's plenty of positive initiatives to support democratic participation and inclusion with digital tools that have been developed and exist by the private sector, there is also a tendency that I believe we should counter, which is the concentration of knowledge and power in the headquarters of a few head tech companies that have obviously, and rightly so, allegedly so, profit as a driver rather than the common good. From the standpoint of civil society and governments, I believe, and I would like to invite you to discuss this as well, that we should invest more and support more also the existing alternatives for the development of new tools that are open, accessible, and can contribute to education as a learner, approaching the learner and participant as such, rather than a consumer or a customer. And this relates also to the concern that the Ministers of Education of the Flanders and the Netherlands have expressed in a public letter about personal data processing by international software vendors and platforms. And in this sense, I would like to also express the support on behalf of the LLLP for this concern and the related call for enhanced collaboration at the European level to avoid the need for each member state to devote a significant amount of time, expertise, and resources for negotiations with big tech firms, when altogether we could make it a smoother process that makes sure that development and implementation of these tools is safe. To conclude, after mentioning several remarks that I hope you could bear with even without a presentation, let me sum this up as an invite to you to include in your discussions for the All Digital Weeks and beyond a coherent approach across policy fields that is open towards the innovation springing also from the ground, and thanks to the evidence-informed approach, and one that is inclusive in its governance and implementation. The European elections, the European Year of Skills, the beginning of the Year of Digital Citizenship Education in the Council of Europe, and the ongoing review of the Digital Education Action Plan are great opportunities for promoting our ideas and continue this discussion together. But first of all, this is the best opportunity to start it with. So thank you once again, Peter and All Digital, and have a wonderful All Digital Weeks.
Thank you for your very nice contribution. Thank you, Elisa. Are there any questions for Elisa? Veronique, please.
Thank you. I was asking what is the place of the protection of the digital well-being in the lifelong learning platform, because we are practitioners here in Brussels and we are faced mostly with our customers, who are mostly people who are not digitalized, about their worry about their own protection, but they also worried about the protection of their children, because they don't have sufficient digital readiness to mediate computer and internet participation of their children. And so I miss a little bit this terminology in your speech, and I want to ask if you are working on this.
Yep, thank you very much. We are working on that, especially not only, but especially right now through EU-funded project, the one that I mentioned before, called iBox. Indeed, it's developed along different dimensions for having more inclusive and diverse civil society organizations. And one includes well-being and having also a digital leg to the projects. The two speak to each other, let's say. So it's part of the trainings that we are developing and implementing. But well-being in general is a big focus for the LLP. We released the position paper in, I believe, 2021. I might be wrong, but it's on the website. That is exactly centered on that, not on the digital sphere, but it includes the digital sphere. And it relates also to assessment as a fundamental element for the learner well-being. So we are, I would say, in a very open way, in the phase of developing more knowledge and capacity on this topic, but definitely it's at the center of the attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you once again. And I would like to thank again to each three of you. And yes, let's give you an applause. And now we are entering the panel discussion. I would like to ask my colleague Norman to come up to the stage, as he's the moderator of the session, introduce the panelists and invite them to join you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Hello again, everyone, and those who have come new for us in the afternoon. I'm very pleased to invite for our panel today some 6 speakers who cover a range of the core themes of the All Digital Weeks. That is Ana Carrero for the European Commission, please join us on stage. Nina Olesen from the European Cybersecurity Organization. Then we have Stefano Kluser, won't be joining us today in person, but he will join us online. Hiam Perez from Fundacio Esplai will join us on stage as well. Ellen McCallum currently gets her microphone fitted, so she'll join us in a moment. And then we have Stella Meyer from the Lisbon Council also here. Right. We'll start with you, Anna. Anna Carrero is the Deputy Head of Unit for the unit responsible for vocational education and training and also CEDEFOP. And she was going to present a bit about also the European Year of Skills that has come to a close just a week ago. But my initial question to you, Anna, is what does vocational education and training bring that other forms of formal education can't?
Well, vocational education and training, as most of you may know, provides skills that are really close to the labor market. So, and many of these programs, they also have a work-based component. I think over 60% do that. And that means that these programs are essential to facilitate school-to-work transitions. So the yield in terms of labor market integration is very high. And they really provide these practical skills that the labor market needs. And as regards digital skills, we want to make people aware that vocational education and training programs are also delivering advanced digital skills. We see nowadays that there are programs that are very relevant for cybersecurity, for cloud computing, business intelligence, Internet of Things. So really, we do believe that there is a lot of potential here, and we need to make these programs attractive and make people aware of them.
Right. Thank you very much for the introduction. You also have a presentation for us.
Yes, shall I?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if...
Yes, the clicker should work and bring you to the first slide.
Yes, yes. I wanted to talk a little bit about the European Year of Skills. It was already mentioned by Elisa earlier. It came to an end last week, and we had the closing event very recently, just a week before. And everybody is asking us, okay, so what comes next? We are done with the skills. We are done with the European Year of Skills. But as she said, we got very positive feedback from our stakeholders. The year really gave a push to skills. And people were talking about a decade of skills. And but just to draw your attention to the words of Commissioner Schmidt in the closing event that I think were very enlightening in this regard. He mentioned that this was only the beginning. It was the spark that needed to continue, and that skills are really essential for all human beings, for life. And in the coming years, there will be three aspects that we will put the focus on. One is competitiveness. So we are now listening more and more how important this dimension is. We have the Letta and Draghi report putting a lot of emphasis in this dimension. So skills are really essential in this respect. Second, it's productivity, particularly when it comes to the interplay with technology, and their digital skills, they play a very important role. And the last dimension would be social justice. So we ensure there are equal opportunities for all. But I wanted just to share with you a couple of facts on the European Year of Skills, what it has meant in practice. So you see all the events that were organized at EU level. The closing event was just the last one of a very long series of important and inspiring events. But
with all our stakeholders, we reached very impressive figures, over 2,000 events, almost 200 EU-led initiatives on skills, lots of efforts when it comes to communication as well, as you can see in the slide. Also, when talking to people, we can see that people that have been have heard about the European Year of Skills are more aware and more willing to participate in training, which is also something that it's encouraging. We have done a lot during the year in terms of initiatives that we will need to implement in the future. So that's something that we will keep us busy in the next months and years. We are talking about the Action Plan on Labor and Skills Shortages, very recently adopted, the Net Zero Skills Academies, the Digital Education and Skills package that Georgi talked about before, or the EU Talent Pool, just to name a few. And of course, during the year, it was also key to keep on delivering on all the initiatives that we had put in place as part of the skills agenda. And they all have a very strong dimension in terms of digital skills, either as a transversal aspect or really focusing on that dimension. Pact for Skills, individual learning accounts, the European Alliance for Apprenticeships, our centers of vocational excellence that are also focusing on digital skills as main topics, some of them, and definitely the EU funding that it's being channeled in this area, and it's over 65 billion. But many topics have emerged as important to work in the future, empowering everyone to train. We were talking about the individual learning accounts. This is one way to do this. Encouraging a strategic dialogue, mainstreaming skills through all policies, but also promoting public-private partnerships, promoting the skills-first approach when it comes to HR management, attracting international talent, promoting skills as an investment and not a cost, and of course, strengthening VET for competitiveness. I would like to conclude just by mentioning the Labor and Skills Shortages Action Plan that was adopted in March. This plan acknowledges the difficulties that companies are having when recruiting. They cannot find the talent they need, and many times this comes from the fact that workers don't have the digital skills that are needed, either general or specialized. So the action plan, it's a common endeavor by the Commission, the member states, but also social partners, where we are all encouraged to take action around 5 key policy areas. Activation of underrepresented groups in the labor market, skills support, for sure, it's a very important dimension, working conditions, removing internal barriers to mobility, and also attracting talent from abroad. So we will be very busy in the coming months and years, because there is a lot to do in the area.
Thank you very much, Anna. Then next, we have our guest, Nina Olesen. Nina Olesen is the head of the sector for the European Cybersecurity Organization on skills and the human resources. And she also is the COO for the Women for Cyber Foundation. But my initial question to you, to start us off, about your work and why cybersecurity is also a skills matter. What is your role in the organization? What is the organization doing on skills development?
Thanks, Norman, and thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm happy to be here with you and having the cyber hat on. Yeah, so we at EXO, we have a working group on skills and human factors that we've had since we established in 2016. And where we've been working on a number of activities ranging from youth education to university curricula for cybersecurity, cyber ranges, workforce issues, also the connection with the HR and the recruitment aspects and so on. But what we've seen in the past years is, as the skills topic has emerged as one of the most important ones and gotten its due attention as well, is that we've been able to mobilize more people, more of our community members, more resources to actually try to bring together a lot of these activities into one central approach, if you will. So today, what we do is we advocate very much a agile end-to-end approach to skills development and career progression in cyber, and providing tools to support this. And one of the things that we've done is launch, in collaboration with Women for Cyber, actually last week or the week before, an online platform called Road to Cyber, where we are essentially encapsulating all of these things that I talked about that we have been working on since 2016. It's a platform that will provide companies, recruiters, the ability to access talent in cybersecurity and really help them bridge that gap of experts, to have training providers come in and display their offering, but also for the learners, of course, and the job seekers, the cyber professionals, to come in and continuously upskill and reskill themselves. And I think that in that sense, what we also very much are supporting is this lifelong learning approach, so that there really is this agile, let's say, way of skilling in cybersecurity as well. So we've just launched, obviously. There's now an infancy period where we're trying to onboard as many people, learners, job seekers as we can, as well as the companies and the providers. So it's free this year. There's a trial period for everyone, and then eventually there'll be a subscription type model where it'll still be free for EXO members, for Women for Cyber partners, as well as the learners and end users themselves. But what we're hoping to do is, through this centralized platform, really help actually boost the cybersecurity workforce in Europe, but also help promote awareness and gender diversity, which we know is also very important in the cybersecurity sector. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have our online guest, Stefano Crusoe, who is a research consultant for All Digital, but he also one of the co-authors of the DigComp frameworks updates version 2.2, which broadened the framework really to a lot of topics, new topics, relevant topics such as AI. And we're talking a lot of skills and competences, but also these terms, and DigComp as a framework helps in defining what we mean by these terms. It also then a future dimension is learning assessments. And Stefano, what can you tell us more about this?
Okay, hello everyone. Just to check, can you see my screen? Just to be sure.
Yes, I think you are on screen here.
No, his screen.
Can you see the slides? Can you see my slides?
No, we can't see you.
No.
Okay, don't know why. I'll try again. And if I cannot work that out, I just pick on them. You see it?
No.
Okay, that's it. Then
you should have your slides here, and if you tell us the next slide, I think we can.
Okay, then if you can go on the official definition of digital competencies, you're asking about the difference between skills and competence. Yes, this one. Perfect. Great, thanks. And okay, we always, in fact, skills and competence are very often used in as the same world, but in the context of let's say official definitions, and in the context of the European key competence frameworks, digital competence has a broader view of what we're talking about compared to skills, strictly skills. As you can see, the official definition that was adopted a few years ago states that digital competence involves confident, critical, and responsible use of and engagement with digital technologies for learning, at work, and for participation in society. So we have a definition which is, in fact, to some extent, very close to the notion of digital citizenship that was mentioned before. And we're talking about something which is not simply skills, which means the ability to actually perform successfully a task, but it has to do also with knowledge, with, as we say, confidence, a critical understanding, a responsible use. So aspects which go towards what we might consider soft skills and behaviors which are important and which ultimately determine the impact of our use of technology and our appropriation of technology. So it's a broader notion. And if we move to the next slide, on this, on the definition of digital competence, and there is a framework that was developed by the European Commission, which is called DigComp, which has undergone already to 4 different steps of evolution. The most recent one came out 2 years ago. And I won't go into this now, but since you were asking what is happening, 2 years ago, we updated the DigComp framework. So what's happening now? And we can go to the next slide, which is about 2 main developments which are taking place. One, which is happening at the JRC, the Joint Research Center, which has been leading the work on request of DG Employment and DG EAC, mostly, the development of DigComp. And we can talk about this learning outcomes project, and I will explain it in a second. And the other activity, main activity at European level on DigComp is the DigComp Hub project, which is an Erasmus Plus project, and I will say a few words about it in a while. Please, let's go on to the next slide. And okay, the learning outcomes work, what is it about? Basically, we understood, and the work that was done last year on the European Digital Skills Certificate was very useful to identify this, to make this need very clear. We need, let's say, to develop the framework much more into details to make it functional to some activities, which might be ultimately also certification of digital skills, but also in general, the design of training activities and so on. At the moment, DigComp is a very powerful framework because it's high-level descriptions of digital competence, non-technology neutral, and open and flexible. But the other side of the coin is that it's very much open to interpretation. And so different organizations have interpreted it in different ways. And when you start comparing training activities, and especially this came out, as I said, very clearly with certificates, you get very different results. Even though everybody refers to DigComp, and this happens because of this openness of the framework. So the learning outcomes work is basically a work which is being carried out at the moment, which is going to identify, a long list of learning outcomes, which we cover all 21 DigComp competencies, most likely up to level 6 of proficiency levels, and in a structured way. And we're talking about most likely hundreds of such learning outcomes, which should, there will be indicative learning outcomes, so there will not be compulsory, but they should provide a much clearer and more detailed framework that everybody will be able to refer to when they design training activities, assessment activities, certification activities, and so on. Can you move to the next slide? And the process is underway at the moment. There is going to be, there are 2 expert consultation meetings which are planned before, just after the summer. And by the end of the year, the process should be completed and the outputs are expected to be published in 2025. Next, please. And the DICOM Hub project is going on in parallel. As I said before, it's an Erasmus Plus project, which has been funded for 30 months. So we are right in the middle of it. It will end in June in a year from now. All Digital is the coordinator, and we have partners, Bantan Education, who Ellen is sitting next to you. She's part of the project, Egina and Hellenic Open University. These are the partners. And we're basically doing two main things. One is we are supporting the development of the DIGCOM community of practice, the DIGCOM COP, and I will say a few words in a while. And on the other hand, we are designing and piloting. We have already piloted a first cycle. We're right in the middle of the second cycle, a short online training and mentoring program targeting adult education and training providers on what is DIGCOM and how it can be used in their activities. Because the framework has been around for a while now, for more than 10 years, but still many people don't know it, even in the education and training sector. And maybe they've heard of it, but they really haven't looked into it and they haven't tried to use it. So with this short training course, we're trying to fill this gap. Please, next slide. So the DIGCOM community of practice, just few words. About a month ago, we went beyond the 1,000 members threshold from all around the world. 88 countries are represented in this membership, and most of them, of course, are from the EU, over 80%, especially Spain and Italy are very much represented, but also we have many members from Germany, from Belgium and Greece. And you can see on the right the composition in terms of stakeholders, sectors. The vast majority is made, of course, of people working in the education area to some extent, but then we also have representatives from government, from the third sector, and from business. And these are all people who somehow share an interest on the DICOM framework for their professional or educational life. Next, please. And one of the main activities that we're carrying on in this project is these webinars that we do more or less once a month about inspiring experiences, where we basically get in touch with people who have been using DIGCOM, and we invite them for a 1-hour webinar. It's a standardized format. And we have been looking at different ways in which DIGCOM has been used over the years and in recent times, and it's currently being used. And maybe I'll say later a few words about the next webinars that we have on our schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Stefano. Next up, we are talking a bit more about digital inclusion, digital equity as well, and how that affects things in the form of our representative from Fundació Esplai, Guillem Porres, who's going to tell us about the organization that he's working for, who is also this year's host for the All Digital Summit in October, but more on that a bit later. And we're starting, I believe, with a video that we see if we can get on screen.
Yes, please.
And then it's over to you.
Yeah, if you have to point the click and learn more. Thank you.
Fundación Esplai, Ciudadanía Comprometida, nació en 1999 con un fin muy claro: trabajar por la transformación y la inclusión social de colectivos vulnerables. Impulsamos proyectos en toda España y también a nivel internacional para la construcción de una sociedad más justa e inclusiva desde la perspectiva de los derechos humanos y con una especial dedicación a la juventud. La alfabetización digital y el desarrollo de las competencias digitales entre la ciudadanía es nuestra forma de trabajar por la inclusión, reduciendo la brecha digital. Trabajamos mediante la intervención social comunitaria y la acción socioeducativa en red con el tercer sector y con el resto de agentes sociales, y promoviendo el voluntariado. Hemos impulsado la plataforma Red Conecta Ciudadanía Comprometida, una red de entidades y centros de competencias digitales en toda España que atiende diversidad de colectivos, especialmente en entornos vulnerables, a partir de múltiples proyectos y metodologías. Nuestra labor alcanza unas 30.000 personas al año e implica un centenar de centros de todo el territorio español. Participamos en diferentes redes de entidades en Europa y en América Latina.
Participación.
Innovación y formación.
Juventud comprometida.
Ciudadanía y tercer sector.
E inclusión.
Justicia educativa y empleo.
So, hello everybody, good afternoon. And well, my name is Guillem. I come from Fundación Splai. Fundación Splai is a non-profit. Sorry, it's again with the music. Okay, it's a non-profit organization that had been working for the last 25 years for the empowerment of citizens from a right perspective and using technology as a mean and not as an end. Since the beginning, through our support of the creation of the first telecenters of digital competence centers in Spain, we have firmly believed that the role of technology should be favor the most suitable community environment for the learning of the people who need it most. We still strongly believe that the digital competence centers and community centers do an amazing contribution to make a more cohesive society. So also the reskilling and upskilling opportunities are doing as well in most of the programs that you do in your organization. So in this way, the socialization of the network and the learning of digital competence must take place from a perspective of rights and not from a perspective of privilege. So what would be the point of moving towards to a more digital and efficient society if this means to leave a significant part of the society behind? It have no sense. So our model defends in this sense free access opportunities to the facilitate incorporation to decent work and the skills to lead a plenty life in a digital society for groups that traditionally don't have it so easy, like young people, migrants, women, unemployed, but also elderly people, people with disabilities. So the technology itself doesn't bring these opportunities, but if we focus in a mentoring methodology that accompany those groups to their daily goals, of course, technology is critical key for their future. So in this approach that we have in Splai, we work strongly with public administration, some of them are here, universities, civil society, and organization to develop not just-in-time employment programs, but also dissemination and certification programs that can reach many sectors. In this approach, I always talk about like a pyramid model, where in the base, we can find dissemination and socio-educational programs in the base, certification and specialization in the middle, and really specialized coding boot camps on the top that we provide also in Splai. So most of our training programs are aimed at improving employability, but those make no sense if we don't continue to make a more aware society, introducing learning of AI and cybersecurity. That are some programs that we are developing too with the help of Microsoft, for example. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next element of our All Digital Week's core themes that we are focusing on with the next speaker is the concept of entrepreneurship and how that as a competence as well relates to development of digital skills overall and how they are mutually combining. And for that, we have Ellen McCallum, who is the director of the Bantani Foundation, who is an organization that was also very much involved, as among many other projects, in the development of the ENTRCOMP framework. Over to you, Ellen.
Thank you. Thank you. Very pleased to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. I'm here as a representative of people who use ENTRCOMP. If I click this button, will my PowerPoint come up? There we go. And Bantony means away we go in Welsh, originally broadly Welsh organisation. And away we go is that kind of ability to move, take agency, take action, move forward in life, in work, in employment, in self-employment, in our motivations, finding our passions, going forth and making the most of life, making the most of our potential. So when we were working around entrepreneurial learning, there are many of us involved in the development of ENTRCOMP. If you know DigComp, you can kind of guess that ENTRCOMP is the European reference framework for entrepreneurship education. I'm not going to go into it in great detail because today I thought I would share some practical examples really of how entrepreneurship, that sense of agency, that sense of being entrepreneurial, having creative ideas, putting them into entrepreneurial action, grasping that moment and doing something with that idea to create innovative value for others, any kind of value, financial, social, economic, joy. The different kinds of value you can bring are multiple, interesting, inspirational, financial, practical. But really, ENTRCOMP was about bringing that into a sense of what does that mean in terms of learning? What does that mean in terms of the skills, the mindset, the competencies that people need to develop? What does it mean in terms of actually putting this into learning experiences for young people, for older people, for people like me? What does it mean? But as we've gone on, this was launched in 2016. It was launched as just after DigComp, just before LifeComp and GreenComp. There's also the Democratic Competence Framework with the Council of Europe. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. These competencies are interlinked. We are humans. These are all skills for life. Digital is coming to the fore because we live in a digital world. Entrepreneurial is coming to the fore because we live in a fast world, volatile, uncertain, complex. And these are then things that we need to bring together. So we created, many of us, again, the ENTRCOMP community to look at supporting people who are working in this field. But increasingly over time, we see, well, this is being entrepreneurial, but that value that's being created, that context in which these competencies are being applied is multiple and varied. It is digital education. It is green. It is citizenship. We need to have entrepreneurial action to produce green transition. We need to be entrepreneurial citizens in order to produce real change, democratic change, social change. We need to have entrepreneurial ideas to move forward the digital transition, to take it to that next level. The ENTRCOMP community is there. There is a handy QR code, I'd like to say. I've been very hot on QR codes in my presentation today, in order to allow people to come together and explore. Now, as part of that, we have also awarded ENTRCOMP champions. Any ENTRCOMP champions in the room? All Digital, I believe, is an ENTRCOMP champion organisation.
Yes.
Yeah, Alteo is an ENTRCOMP champion. We have Olena as well. Pambos, you haven't applied yet. You should. Vasiliki, same. And there'll be more. I just don't know you yet. So this is something that brings people together, just like the DigComp community. And we work together with DigComp community through DigComp Hub, also the Education Hub for Green as well, which is not called that. But this is where I wanted to share today that this is something that now we blend these competence areas. We look at how we can bring this competence learning to different contexts, different learners, different levels of learning. So the first one I want to mention is called Scaffold. And this is not something that we lead. It's something that Olena Beck from the European Training Foundation leads over there. Round of applause for Olena. I didn't know she was going to be here today, so this is great. Fortuitous. Scaffold, a set of cards, but a set of cards that can transform learning, a set of cards that can open up and educators' ideas of how to present these different competencies, these skill sets, life skills, digital, entrepreneurial, green, life skills, into learning, what pedagogies to look at, what assessment approaches to take, what ways in which we can develop these competencies through learning. So we're actually trialing this with the European Training Foundation across 5 countries in Central Asia. My knowledge of Central Asian languages has increased rapidly. But this card set is something that's very practical, and I left my set in my bag. If you want to see them, come and see me afterwards. It takes the competence frameworks together and applies them into a tool that can be used by educators. Have a look. The QR code, which is on the previous page, sorry, takes you to the ETF page. Second one, EntreComp for Transition, Vocational Education Alliance for Innovation Projects from the European Commission, funded by the European Commission, working towards green and digital. But you don't get to green and digital without that agency, that need for action, the understanding of what skills I have to enable that action. So this is about creating pathways, learning pathways that will support learners in vocational and higher education to make that leap into being a green transition facilitator, into being a digital transition facilitator towards that future, opening up different careers. And then here what we're looking at is that whole understanding the mismatches, looking at the learning pathways and testing them and then validating that knowledge as well across 5 countries. I'm going quickly now. The last one I want to mention is Entrepreneurship for All. And again, we see here, we've looked at the community building. We've looked at supporting educators across different levels, but very much schools and vocational. We've looked at vocational and higher. Entrepreneurship for All is looking at aspiring would-be entrepreneurs and active entrepreneurs and supporting a digital learning ecosystem that helps them realize their skills development, helps them to explore what the skills they need to grow, support their business, their entrepreneurial idea into their next steps. And this is a European initiative. So we lead a European initiative with lovely colleagues in the room. Vasiliki from ReadLab is here. There we go. This is something that, again, we started out looking at competence pillars, but it's blended. We can't look at skill sets. Entrepreneurs aren't interested in, I'm going to develop my financial knowledge. It sounds interesting, but actually it's like, what are their pain points? What are the issues they need to address in their startup pathway? What are the issues that come up with things that emerge through your entrepreneurial journey? I'm an entrepreneur, social entrepreneur. Believe me, the roller coaster is real. Late payment directive is something that we're bringing into this in a very practical way in order to understand how skills development can support people to understand and deal with that. This digital learning ecosystem, we will look at, obviously, website, e-learning platform, but also embrace the different learning in spaces that we can create to support people. Building in AI naturally, because everybody does. XR, VR, because that's interesting. It's trying to appeal to different kinds of learners, people who learn in different ways to bring it together. And all of this supported by, I have to say, an amazing global expert panel. Thank you, Elena, one of them. But we've got brilliant people from amazing global organizations really supporting us in how to shape this. So that's Bantini, but moreover, that's entrepreneurship. It's a life skill, but it's one of all of these sets of life skills mindset that we need to develop in order to be human, move forward, and survive in this world that is here and is coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ellen. And now for a further dimension of the All Digital Weeks, it has been mentioned several times in the form of digital democracy, the upcoming elections, citizenship came up in several of your presentations and our keynote speeches as well. We have here today Stella Meyer, who is a research associate for the Lisbon Council, who itself as an organization is a member of the Digital Citizenship Working Group. And they have developed a tool called the Digital Citizenship Map. And Stella is going to tell us more about it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm happy to talk about the map. The Digital Citizenship Map is actually an initiative of the Digital Citizenship Working Group, which was launched in late 2020. And it's a group of different stakeholders from all sectors with the overarching goal of closing the skills gap and increasing digital citizenship across Europe. And so we've kind of heard it before, digital citizenship is kind of a broad term, but basically it's 5 pillars. The working group works with 5 pillars that cover all of these skills that are needed to navigate the online world safely, positively, to communicate with others, engage online, create and consume online content, and really leverage everything that digital has to offer. And inclusivity is a huge part of that. So we need to make sure that everyone is included in this. And so one way to promote digital citizenship for the working group was to create the digital citizenship map, which is something that the Lisbon Council, who's also a member of the working group, took on and created. And it's a virtual map. You can see a screenshot here. It's a virtual map of Europe, highlighting initiatives from across the continent that work towards closing the skills gap through different means. And we started last year with 18 initiatives from 16 different countries. Most of the initiatives work in several countries, some across the continent. And they all focus on different target audiences, different pillars. They operate in different languages, which is super important. So diversity is one of the key criteria for projects to be included in the map. So as an example, when you go to the map, you can filter by different categories. You can filter by target audience, by country, and then you can click on a project and kind of learn more about it. So you can see, what is the project about? Is it still active? What languages are available? There is, milestones, achievements, but most importantly, there is a point of contact. And for us, that's most important because the overarching goal of the map is not just to highlight noteworthy initiatives, but also to create synergies, to inspire new projects. A lot of the projects are grassroots, and I think that's the way to go for digital citizenship, because only if you know your community, you know the needs, you can implement something. So the map aims to inspire new projects and create synergies. So you go to the map, you look at what's out there, what's the need in my community, is there something that I can learn? And then you can reach out to a project and maybe work together, continue a project that has ended already. So that's kind of the idea. And it's a living project. So we're currently reviewing 8 projects that have been submitted through the website. There is an online form where you can just suggest an initiative that you think is really, innovative or original and does something to close the skills gap in any way. There are different criteria. So submissions are not automatically added to the map. There is an editorial board that will evaluate the projects based on some criteria like measurable impact or scalability. I have a slide on the editorial process. So we have an editorial board comprised of academia and industry members, civil society, who are assigned projects that are submitted, and they review them based on the criteria. And then basically we have 3 scenarios. Either the project is rejected, they do have to give a reason for why they don't want the project to be included. Sometimes that's just because there are too many initiatives that are similar, and that's why not. If a project is a bit ambiguous, the entire board will discuss it, and then either it's accepted or it's rejected. And ideally, it's accepted. And then we, the Lisbon Council, reach out to the organization and kind of try to learn more. We ask them if they want to be included, of course. And then we find out how we can best promote the project in the map and highlight their achievements and create synergies. So it's also for us about finding out what are the needs for initiatives? How can we support them? So we also do workshops and offer support for especially smaller organizations or grassroots initiatives that often have a little bit of problem, getting their project off the ground. So like I said, it's a living project. So if you have an initiative that you think should be included, take a look at the map, browse, through the initiatives that we have, and maybe suggest a new one if you want. Yes, and if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Stella. Right, after this first round of presentations on these specific topics that our experts are representing in the framework of the All Digital Weeks and our core themes. I have some short follow-up questions. I already had a prepared follow-up question that I started with in my excitement on vocational training, so I'm having a slightly different question for you, Anna. The elections are coming up with it, a new commission, but you also mentioned that we have already newly launched initiatives that were just launched with the action plan in March. How much do you think do we need to worry that it's going to change, or is skill development still going to be an agenda point for the Commission in the future?
Well, I cannot answer this question. I don't have the crystal ball, but what I can tell you is a bit what I started with. We all know that skills will be very important in the agenda. It's very much linked to competitiveness, which is really the focus now. And we'll see how this will play out, but we have a lot to implement still. I mean, the Year of Skill focused a lot on changing the mindset and to focus on implementation, because we have very useful tools and initiatives in place. And what we really need is for all the stakeholders to get involved and really implement those on the ground. And we need to do this together, exchanging as we are doing today. And the Commission will be there to support everybody in this endeavor.
Thank you very much. Nina, now with your head with the Women for Cyber Foundation, discussing and promote the promotion of gender parity in the ICT sector has been a topic for quite some time now. Where do we stand?
Well, I can only speak for cyber, not ICT
Is
as
it
a
an
whole.
important element within that?
Yeah. No, listen, I think it's estimated today that women make up around 20% of the European cybersecurity workforce. It's a little bit more at the global level, which is an improvement compared to a few years ago when we launched Women for Cyber, where estimates were ranging between 11 to 14%. So that's good, but I think that there's still quite a lot more that we can do to enhance the participation of not only women, but also other underrepresented groups in the cybersecurity field. But until now, so Women for Cyber was established back in 2019, and we've been working on a number of, let's say, concrete activities to try and help the cause since then. Some of the things we find are working very well is mentorship. Facilitating access to education and training through scholarships, for instance, because education and training tends to still be quite costly. And then also, I would say just mobilizing the community at a very grassroots level. So we actually have 28 national chapters across geographical Europe today, and are representing something. We're now well over 60,000 individual community members. And we wouldn't have been able to do that from just here, from the foundation level at the European level. So I think that that's very, very important. But at a more strategic level, I would say that it's important also to say that diversity as well is something that can give companies a competitive edge. There's a business case to be made for diversity. It brings profitability. It makes for more efficient teams. It boosts innovation, and it draws investment also from outside. So that's something that I'm trying to push a lot, because after all, that's something that concerns everyone, men and women. And we need everyone on board. So I think that that's something that's extremely important going forward to also push this message in the future. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Next, we turn back to Stefano online. Stefano, you already mentioned the DigCom Hub project and explained a bit what it has been doing so far, but you also hinted at upcoming activities. What can we expect from the DigCom Hub project in the next months or year?
Okay. Well, we will replicate 2 other times the training activity on the DigCom course that's planned, and we are trying to get constructive critical feedback from participants to improve it, because the idea is to make it as useful as possible and then release it as on a open license for for anyone to reuse it and translate it maybe and localize it in local languages, national context. But on the side of the community of practice, we have, I would say, 2 or 3 topics which I see coming up. One which has raised a lot of interest is about the digital skilling, let's say analysis of requirements and then how to meet them of students, professors, and administrative staff at higher education, in tertiary education. This is something on which many entities are working around. And we have a new member of the COP from Germany who is running a project among 3 universities. And she posted a message saying, we are starting to do this. And I don't know, like 20 people said, oh, I'm interested also. So we are organizing for the 2nd of July a workshop where they will present how they are designing this activity, and we are trying to involve some other universities who are already doing this, just to share their experience. My impression is that, I mean, there are many. Everybody more or less is doing the same thing. This is the thing. It would be nice if there was more coordination. I don't know how, but we are trying to contribute, let's say, in our small context to make that people learn from others and, if possible, when possible, reuse solutions. This is one area. Another area that is coming up is the issue of the digital skills of citizens when they are patients in healthcare, long-term care, caregivers. So let's say digital skills related to the use of current health services, digitalized health services. But we are all seeing a growth of, like telemedicine, telemonitoring, all these kind of applications which are becoming important. And the question is, to what extent citizens need to develop skills to better take advantage of these opportunities. It's just a matter of, there is a lot of attention on health operators, of course, which makes sense, but on the side of the citizens, it's not clear. So it's there are several members of the COP who are saying we would like to look at this, and we probably will soon launch a discussion forum on this topic.
Thank you very much, Stefano. Very good also topic considering the All Digital Weeks. One of the core themes is digital skills in different sectors. Very much on point on that. Turning back to Guillem, I mentioned that Fundación Splai will be the host for this year's All Digital Summit. It will take place in October in Madrid. What can we expect there?
Well, I can give you in advance the title, that it would be Summit of Engaged Digital Citizenship, like we connecting for an informed and aware society. So we are planning 4-day events in Madrid, plenty of activities and discussion panels, keynotes, specialists, and for sure we're gonna discuss some topics that are sustainability and social impact in digital society, innovation and social technology, disruptive technologies and new skills, and rights and European digital principles through policies. So this year we have a special summit, like the confluence of 2 big events, the Digital Rights Forum, that some of you have come to Barcelona 2 years ago, with the Summit of All Digital. So we are expecting about 400 people to come to the event. So we are trying to reach that amount of people to the summit, and we are inviting a lot of organizations, foundations, companies, wherever to come and to discuss about this topic. That's going to be a relevant topic for the next year in European level. So the last time that we made all together, like All Digital with the people of Splai and Plataforma Red Conecta, we make a great job. So we make a book that most of you have, I hope that you have read, about conclusions. So the dynamic of the event will be the same, like putting all together our brains to think about the digital citizenship. What does it mean, and what does it mean for you in your life and your daily professional lives? So this will be the event in Madrid. It's going to take place from the 15th of October to the 18th of October. So everybody is invited, and we will discuss some more tomorrow in the assembly. So we're going to get more information. So all of you are invited.
Thank you very much. Ellen, you presented a number of activities that Pantani is doing in the framework of the Entrecomp community and also entrepreneurship. And we also heard that Pantani is part of the Digicomp Hub project. Which of the many activities, and maybe one you haven't mentioned yet, or one of the events you have mentioned, is the one that you are the most excited about? Maybe something that's also in the works that is not yet.
I think the first one I'd have to mention is Entrepreneurship for All, this digital learning ecosystem that's coming to fruition. I'm excited to see the content of the learning that we create across these competence areas that focuses on the pain points and pathways. And I think that's where we're very excited that in this partnership, we have All Digital leading on the digital pillar. We have EIT Food leading on our sustainability work. We have the Women's Organization and Enterprise Evolution Consultancy leading on our financial and also our women's pathways, because that is a really key area for us. And also then, I'm going to have a mind blank now. No, I'm not. Matera Hub leading on our entrepreneurship pillar. I would like to say we are still exploring how we can enrich this with relevant speakers, relevant content from other partners as well. We'll be doing an open call for learning. We'll also be looking at, if you're interested to sort of test and see what our learning pathways look like and give your view, I'd be most keen to have a look. Sorry, looking at my colleague, because this is something that would be very interesting for us. So I'd love to have a chat. The other thing I'm very interested in is Scaffold. It's the ETFs tool developed with JRC. It's exciting. It offers a new frontier in how we see learning design through this very simple card set. And I think that's something that we're excited to see how it develops, how ETF take it forward. And obviously we want to support that too. So, and we've got Being Entrepreneurial 2024, end of November in Brussels. You are more than welcome. Conference celebrating all things entrepreneurial. Value creation, here we come.
Thank you very much, Ellen. And finally, Stella, the European elections, we have mentioned them, are also around the corner. It's less than a month away. From the context of your expertise within the working group on digital citizenship, are we all set, or is there still more work to do for us?
I think it's never going to be a task that we can just cross off our list. So I think there's always going to be more work to do. We have excellent guidelines. We've heard about them before. There are some really good tools out there, but I think it's more about implementing them and sticking at it, and not just right before the elections, but really keeping that momentum going. Now there is a lot of attention on it, which is great, but I think we need to make sure that we, hold that attention and that we continue delivering skills trainings, that we continue focusing not just on a specific skill, but really the whole skill set, the whole array of digital citizenship skills. So I think yes and no.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are finishing the session. Contrary to what Stella just said, there's always more work to do. Now there's time for a break, a well-deserved one, I think. And after that, we're returning to focus on one of the big topics we haven't discussed in this panel, which is the role of artificial intelligence, where you can have more of a workshop and a panel discussion on that topic to come back to. But for now, enjoy your break. Thank you very much to the panel and the guests.
Thank you. Really nice.
All right. Hello, everyone. Let's wait for some more people to flow in. All right. I think we've got most people here. How was the break? Fine. All right. Awesome. Quick introduction from my side. My name is Dries Augustijns. I'm a technical architect here at Microsoft, and I focus on everything that has to do with artificial intelligence and application strategies. What I'm going to do with you today is I'm going to show you the power of generative AI through Copilot, right? Who already sometimes uses a generative AI tool at work? I hope to see a lot of hands. Yep. Who has used Copilot before? Less hands. That's good. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to teach you something new today. Now, before I do so, I always like to start with a quote from Bill Gates. And that quote is, I think it's fair to say that the PC has become the most empowering tool we've ever created. And I can't agree more with Bill, right? Can we imagine a life without our computers? I even see a couple of them here, so I'm going to assume the answer is no. I personally can't. I have to take this thing everywhere I go. But there's one problem that I have with this quote, because that's when Bill said it. He said it in 1994. And just to quickly take you back before we get to the demo, this is what we called empowering in 94/95. If you look at this now, would you still call it empowering? Difficult question, right? Today, maybe not anymore, but back then, totally empowering, right? Because what was the next best thing? A black screen with a white flashing cursor on it. That was it. This is totally empowering. Empowerment is a constant chase for innovation. It's something that you always need to challenge. And for us, challenging that has become Copilot. And Copilot is your generative AI assistant in the applications that you already know. Teams, Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all of those. A generative AI tool that can help you, that understands what you're trying to do and guides you in the right direction. To be a better learner, to get to information faster, and in general, to become a more productive person. And that's what I'm going to show you today. I'm going to show you a couple of examples, short and snappy, on how I personally use Copilot. Let me switch to my screen so you can all see what I'm seeing. There we go. Now, the first place I'm going to go is to the application that I sadly have to admit spend most of my day in. That's Outlook. Because I have an email thread here, and this is a scenario that happens a lot. To guide you through what happened here, I had a question for a couple of my colleagues. I sent it off to them, and I put a colleague of mine in CC. And the first response came in, and what happened, that colleague did the great old switcheroo. He put me in CC, put himself in the to field, and started taking over the conversation. And that's an issue, because now I have no clue what's going on. I have a filter that automatically sorts these emails in another folder. So now I'm lost. Because I want to be contributive, I want to give an answer to what's going on here, but I don't know what has been going on. What I can do is I can use Copilot to get a summary of my email. You will always find Copilot in the top right. Here you have that summarize button. And what's going to happen is Copilot is going to read through that email thread. It's going to try to figure out all of the patterns, discover what is going on, and give me a summary of all of those emails. Now, in this case, it's a thread of 15 emails. And Copilot summarizes it for me nicely in 5 bullet points. And now I know exactly what's going on. It's as easy as that. I have all the information that I need to once again be productive, to help my colleagues, and to take over the conversation that I initially started. Now I'm ready to reply. So let's hit reply all. Now you will see that Outlook already tells me that I have an option here, and that option is draft with Copilot. Copilot can also assist me in writing emails. If you, for example, ask it, let's say, write an email that says, thank you to TJ for helping, because my colleague TJ has been a wonderful help indeed. Copilot is going to take the emails that were sent with my instruction and give me an example of an email that I can use. I can ask it to change it or completely make a new one, but in this case, it's all right. I'm going to press keep it. And here I want to take a little pause, because something important happened here. We've called it Copilot. We've not called it Autopilot. And there's a good reason for that. Copilot will not take actions for you. You're still in charge. It's just a Copilot that's sitting next to you and helps you. It may have written this email, yes, 100%, but it did not hit send. Because I, as the human, should always be in charge. I need to verify, is this actually correct? In this case, it looks correct, so we can send it off if we want to. But I, as the human, am still in charge. That's a really, really important one. Now, if you're not a fan of AI-generated content, there is a second option. Because on one hand, we've got draft with Copilots, but we've also got coaching by Copilots. I'm personally not a big fan of AI-generated content. I like my mails to be personal, but I also know that I'm not the best writer. Could be better. What I can do is I can use Copilot to help me. I write the email myself, and I just ask Copilot, can you please give me feedback on this? How should I improve my tone, my clarity? How do I become a better communicator? So that's what we're doing here. We've asked Copilot to go through this email and give me concrete tips and tricks on how I can become a better communicator. Here we go. And one tip is I could maybe be a little bit more enthusiastic. That's fair. And concrete suggestions on how I can do so. On top of that, engaging with the reader a little more, make it more detailed, and specific details for clarity. I'm still in charge. I can still write my emails, and Copilot can coach me to get better results. That's two ways of using Copilot. Copilot doesn't need to create everything for us. Just part of it is already a good start, an outline, for example. Or you can use generative AI as a coach. That's something that I don't see a lot of people do, but know that generative AI is really good at it. Copilot can be a coach, can guide you in the right direction. Now, on top of that, I'd like to show you another Copilot, one that I use a lot, and that's this one. This is Copilot for the web, as we've called it. And what we've done is we've given generative AI access to the internet, meaning that I can browse the web using natural language. And that's very important because let's be honest, search engines like Google, Bing, Yahoo, they were never made for humans in the first place. The way you need to ask questions to them is so specific, so vague. A lot of people don't know how to do it right. Natural language is something that we understand. So I can ask Copilot to help me with something. Let's say that I want to write a blog post. I write a lot of stuff and Copilot can help me with that. So we're going to ask Copilot to generate me an outline for a blog post about the impact of AI on education. I think that's an interesting blog post. Let's ask Copilot to help me. And once again, keep in mind, I'm not asking it to generate the blog post for me. I'm asking it to generate an outline, a start for me as the human to take over and to write the actual post. Here we go. We get our outline nicely summarized. I think this is quite good. And what we will also see is that Copilot tells us, and it's rather small, I know, but at the bottom, it tells us learn more. It tells us about the references, right? Because this information came from somewhere. But how do you know where it comes from? Those are those references. It tells you where it found that information, and I, as the human, I'm still in charge. In this case, for example, it took information from UNESCO, and it takes me to that exact page where the information comes from. Always check your sources. It's another one I want you to remember. When we talk about generative AI, sometimes it might mess up. It's very well possible. This way, you always have the sources at hand, and you know exactly what's going on. You can always double check. Now, we have our text, our outline, but we need something more, right? Because we also need an image to go with that blog post, right? And here we can also use generative AI. Because did you know that Copilot can actually generate new images? That's something that's possible. What we're going to do is we're going to click New Topic, and we're going to switch Copilot to be more creative. It's going to make it a nice purple tint. And we're going to ask it to be creative and generate us an image. Generate me an image that I can use as a cover for a blog about the impact of AI on education. There we go. And what's going to happen is generative AI is going to try to understand what I'm willing and wanting to achieve here. In this case, I want an image and I want it to be about the impact of AI on education. You're going to tell us I'll try to create that. And don't worry, this is just a loader. This is not the actual image. It's going to generate that image for us. And it's actually going to give us options. Once it's done, we'll see that we get 4 different images that we can pick. Here we go. I quite like this one. I think it shows the impact of AI on education. Maybe a little bit overkill, but it's a start. Generative AI will also guide me, right? At the bottom, I see those follow-up questions. Those are also AI generated. It guides me in the right direction to get to better information. For example, if we say include a teacher and a robot in the image, then it will take the context. And that's an important concept to grasp. Generative AI is really good at understanding an entire conversation, not just one question or one query, but an entire conversation. It knows that we're trying to generate an image on AI and education, and we've given it another instruction. And just like that, it's going to create that image for us. Here we go. This took 10 seconds, 15 seconds. If I needed to create this myself, I don't think I would even be able to do it. Copilot can do it, and Copilot allows me to be more creative. That's the way that I use Copilot. Because, going to be honest, I'm quite a productive person. I spent my teenage years learning all the keyboard shortcuts, so I know my way around a computer. But if there's something that I'm really not, then it's a creative. That's something that I'm really lacking. I don't know how to write. I don't know how to make images, but generative AI assists me in doing so. It helps me to become a better writer. It helps me to create visuals. It helps me in the right direction. All by asking questions in the language that I already know. That's a really powerful one, right? Now, I would like to add one more Copilot in here, and this is one that I need to use more than I care to admit. But part of my job is doing brainstorming sessions, whiteboarding. And most of the time, they end up looking something like this. A bunch of yellow Post-its on a board with zero structure. It's an issue, because this means that I now have to manually sort them, clean them up, figure out what's going on, discover the patterns, and waste 2 or 3 hours of my day, of my already precious time. But luckily, I can use Copilot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the Copilot logo, this time bottom right, and I'm going to ask Copilot to categorize. First up, it's going to ask me, are these all of the nodes that you want to categorize? Yes, exactly. We're going to ask it to categorize. It's going to look at all of those Post-its, put them nicely into categories. Fully automatically. I don't need to do anything, but wait. Once again, saving me time. In this case, you've got 4 categories, but this works for way more. This can work for hundreds, 200 Post-its, all with the power of generative AI, right? Do you see the 2 patterns, right? There's 2 patterns. Either you can use generative AI to become more productive, to do more, to get more work done, to feel empowered, or you use it to become more creative. That's also a path, right? And that's a path that I don't see a lot of people explore. But know that it is very much possible to become more creative, thanks to generative AI. And with that, I would like to give the words to our next panel, which undoubtedly will also talk about artificial intelligence, education, skilling. All of those things are really, really important. Keep in mind, 20% is technology, 80% is people, 80% is skills, 80% is about guiding people in the right direction to get most out of this technology. Because just giving them the technology doesn't bring us anywhere. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dries. That was amazing. And I just want to point out that I just found out Dries, I could be his father because it's like a 20-year difference between us. And this is relevant because I grew up in a time where we had Windows 94 come out, or 95, because I used to be a teacher and I didn't have a computer when I was a teacher. I was teaching kids to read and write. And my mother was a teacher and she just retired a couple of years ago. And one of the reasons she retired was because things were getting too computery and she could not keep up. So we're here to talk about the future of education, generative AI and skills, but it's hugely relevant to see that gap, that generational gap, and how do we close that gap? And the many applications that this amazing technology has, how can we apply that to skills? So with that, I'd like to invite my fellow panelists up here, and we can discuss some of that, the biggest questions of Gen AI in skills. And I gotta say, these are not just fellow panelists, these are friends and colleagues that we've worked together for years. I'm very happy to share this stage with them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I'll sit here.
Doesn't matter.
So I do have some guiding principles. So one of the things I want to say is one of the main topics about generative AI and skilling is personalization versus standardization, right? Because we've learned through Dries that there's a lot of efficiencies to be found. There's a lot of creativity that can be drawn from AI in skilling, and that means we can have tailor-made pathways, learning pathways, right, that are made by AI. We can also have AI help teachers do automatic, grading, and they can, liberate lots of time-consuming tasks. But what does it mean for the student? So when we talk about personalization versus standardization, standardization with technology allows us to be more efficient, but we also need to be very personal and specific. So generative AI and generative AI skilling is a way of doing that. Do you have any views on standardization versus personalization?
Well, I have done my homework, so I was looking for like strengths and challenges that for example personalization and standardization have. For example, one of the strengths is the higher quality, like personal learning experience catered to individual needs, preference, and learning styles, for example, or the tailored content that a student receives content relevant to their, or for example, motivation. No? They boost motivation and self-direct learning in like strengths of personalization. But we also have some challenge too, that, for example, the resource intensive, so time consuming and resource intensive is a challenge for personalization, and maybe the scalability also. So it's challenging to scale personalized approach to large groups, or for example, the data privacy too, no? So personalizations rise on student data, rising privacy concerns. So this would be the balance between personalization, but also about standardization. For example, strengths of standardization, efficiency, consistency, assessment would be strengths. But also we have challenge now with that, like the lack of individualization. So for example, one-size-fits-all approaches may not meet diverse student needs, or for example, creativity limitation. No, so sometimes like student engagement could be another challenges of standardization. So a mixture between one another is the best option, no, to personalize and standardization. And I think that the role of the AI is to put it all together in that point.
Thanks, Guillem. And I just want to point out, so we've been living with Gen AI for 18 months, basically, right? It's super recent. So when we talk about Gen AI and skilling, we're talking about applications that are just starting to take off, right? Because we're just starting to see how it works in education. And you mentioned, it can stifle creativity. Sure, that's definitely possible when you see when you saw people, students were asking ChatGPT to create their essays or whatever, it's natural that in the first steps of any technology, it's just a rampant use very like little regard for what's happening, really, to stop and reflect on what the technology is doing. But when we start digesting it, we start realizing that there's applications that actually bring creativity into it. Imagine a chatbot in the classroom that takes on a historical figure. So imagine you learn about the Second Empire in France through Napoleon III in a chatbot. I mean, anything is possible when you apply that kind of creativity to the tool, and that can help motivate students. But anyway, that's just a side thought. Laurencio,
just to follow up on that thought, I think this app or tool is called Hello History, and it actually allows you to bring to life various historical figures, and you would be able to chat and ask different questions to them and to learn in a different way, let's say. I think this is where learning is made more interesting and engaging for the students, and this is where actually AI has a big role. And I think, to the discussion about standardization versus personalization, it's always difficult to strike the right balance. I think there were different studies saying that personalization is something that is really needed today, especially that technology is so present in education. And now with the appearance of AI tools is even more important. And to be honest, I think I agree with Guillaume that we probably need a hybrid system in which you keep standardization for different aspects. When it comes to the quality of different environments, learning environments, standardization is still important. But if we take, for example, the only success benchmark that is a test that scores all students with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 until 10, then I think we might have a problem, because learning should be a bit more flexible and adapted to the needs, to the types of ways to learn by the students and the ways of teaching, let's say, for the teachers.
Yeah, and to that point, so adaptive pathways and adaptive platforms are new tools where AI is analyzing the progress of the student and can anticipate failure or blockage and adapt the learning in consequence, and then saying, well, this isn't working well, let's move on to another type of learning, whether it's more interactive, whether it's more, with a coach. So that is bringing technology into making it a more personalized experience. What's complex is how do you standardize so you can compare across different adaptive pathways and platforms. That's a challenge, and something we're going to discover. But there's universities all over the world, and I say universities because they're usually the hubs of innovation that are trying out all these things. And we're just learning what can happen. So it's great to see Copilot used in the workplace, and other tools that derive from that same Gen AI used for education are just starting out. But what we need first and foremost, I think, is bring an equitable access to Gen AI for everyone. And that doesn't necessarily mean everyone's creating large language models. It means anyone can interact with Gen AI, whether it's just asking Gen AI to create an image, whether it's asking Gen AI to make a summary, understanding that. And actually, one thing we don't talk about is we will always need the teacher in the classroom. But the teacher, if the teacher is using Gen AI, they need to understand how Gen AI came to that conclusion, that proposal, that whatever. That transparency is hugely important to understand the process behind. To understand and be able to tell the students, what, that came from that resource, and I hope you understand that that might be wrong because it's on the internet or whatever. But understanding how Gen AI works is hugely important. And when we strive at Microsoft to do like Gen AI skilling for everyone, is to really bring that understanding, just like people are familiar with smartphones today, to make it as familiar to be like, anyone can understand Gen AI. Anyway,
I agree.
Can
I continue that?
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, as you say, I think it's really important that understanding how AI works is recognized as a basic skill. I'm not sure even if it's a digital skill. It's a basic skill today because AI is in everything. I'm holding my mobile in my hand. Guillaume will talk about Sply, and some social media app will, track my online behavior, and tomorrow or today even it'll give me some ads about Sply's great services. And I will understand why this happens, but I think there are still many people that don't understand how these algorithms work, and then their decisions are influenced without them knowing how it happens. So I think, especially when you talk about teachers, they are quite resistant. Formal education is quite resistant to change, especially in Romania. We are still dealing with, implementing Digicomp Edu as a framework for the digital competences. So we're not talking about AI yet. And, as I said, Gen AI Edu as projects and initiatives are really good. But I think the importance of governments and Ministry of Education adopting education, AI in education, the policies that are now, let's say, promoted by the European Commission is key.
Yeah, I strongly agree with you. That's why when we're providing AI content or training, we should take into account the base of the dissemination about exploring what it works. Yesterday we were talking about the symbol, the icon of AI sometimes that is a kind of a star, a kind of magic. No, we were discussing about this. It's not magic. No, so we have to understand that there's something that belongs from mathematics, statistics, and probabilities and things like that. And to understand that when you get a question, you will receive an answer, but you have to be you have to take care about this answer, where it belongs as reference, and how you use it. No, and this is the starting point. When we start, for example, 4 years ago in Sply, talking about machine learning for kids, we start with Scratch and some other programs. The people say, "What are you doing? No, what are you explaining in this?" And we try to do it in a simple way, like a childhood activity to understand how machine learning goes. And there are lots such a teachable contents that can make that sense, no, to the people to understand how it works, and then to use the potential of AI. So the first step is to understand how it works.
Yeah, and definitely, and we're talking about making sure it's inclusive for everyone. I'm sorry, you have a question? Yeah. Okay. We'll ask the question right after. I just wanted to say something on. Yes, making it inclusive for everyone. And I talked about my mother earlier, but I think just in general, if we want to make Gen AI adaptable to lifelong learning, another aspect of it is assessing skills gap and making sure that we use Gen AI to assess skills that people may already have. And that's a great tool because just by simply analyzing someone's conversation, or if they answer a few questions, Gen AI can analyze where they're lacking on certain skills or certain industry recognized skills as well. And that's something that we can work with industry professionals to determine what kind of skills are needed for something, or micro certifications as well. Gen AI can stack them to create a full learning pathway and accreditation. So there's many applications for lifelong learning and for adult learning. And that's something that we're all concerned with as well, because it's easy to say, we'll include Gen AI in education for young people, and they'll absorb anything like a sponge, right? I mean, you teach them today, and in 6 months, they'll be creating everything for us. But for older people, it's much more difficult. And especially nowadays, when we think about making sure that skills that we already have keep being relevant or keep being enhanced by Gen AI instead of the opposite, it's key to have that help. Do you want to ask your question now? Can we get the mic? Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi. No, it's extremely interesting listening to you guys, and it's great that we are having this conversation. So my brain is really working. So, and I wanted to ask you, also after the inspiring presentation that we had just before you guys came. I'm just wondering how you think about this concept of the fact that, I mean, Gen AI is really here to do a lot of things that we were up until now depending on people to do, and especially in this way of being artistic and being creative. We are seeing now all of these things can be done by Gen AI. But at the same time, do you think that this is also something, I'm hearing from you, this is still something that we as humans should also be developing our own skills of doing this and then trying to use the technology to benefit it, but not to not to have those skills instead of us having those same skills as well as humans. Do we agree on this, that us as humans should still be trying to be creative, be creative, let's say, independently of the technology? Okay, so if that's the case, I'm glad that we agree. Then my question is whether you think that there are some skills that need to be acquired before it makes sense that children are using this in schools, or no?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
If I may. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, it's the same about media literacy, no? So it's important to understand how a TV program works before you're seeing like the news or everything like this. So it's important to understand how it works first of all. We think that this kind of skills are already in the back of the skills where you related with the software. At the end, we are relating with the software, no? So at the beginning of productivity programs, when we start with MOS certification in 2012, most of the people said, "Oh, what, an exam from Excel or PowerPoint? What is that?" And then when they see the potential of the tool, it's just a collaborative potential. So I don't think that this kind of tools gonna cover the part of the humans have from creativity, or they just expands these possibilities. So maybe what we have to teach is to young people and also to adults is to understand how they works. And I think the most complicated thing is to understand what's the difference between the reality from a creation from a human and the creation, not like something, a creation from a machine or from a generation AI generative product, no? To understand, I think that we have a challenge here to know people to have tools to difference one another.
And I was just going to say, well, Dries emphasize that, you know, it's co-pilot, you're still the pilot, all that. But I think more than that, if you ask any teacher why they wanted to become a teacher, it was not about grading papers. It was about molding tomorrow's society or even, you know, older adults. I mean, when I was doing literacy for adults, I mean, they weren't children, but I was still trying to have an impact on their lives. And I don't think that changes. I think what happens is that Gen AI tools help take some of the burden away from the teacher, and they can really focus on that coaching, that mentoring, that individual attention that the students need. So that will always be there. But like I said earlier, they also need to understand how AI and Gen AI is working to do the automatic grading or analyzing the language of an essay to give whatever grade, to then understand and be able to tell the students, well, this is how this was done, and this is how you, because otherwise you lose transparency over the process, and it's super key. Plus, Gen AI is still learning, and teachers and all of us have a responsibility to provide, to close the feedback loop and ensure that what you're saying is correct and that it you know, gets only better. So yeah.
Maybe just to add that, to me, the short answer is critical thinking, and this is something that was mentioned before, I think by Mariana earlier, that is not maybe whatever policies, strategies we have that are concerning technology and digital advancement, we are not talking enough about critical thinking. And this is something that should be there in the formal education, in the non-formal education as well. Whenever we teach technology, AI especially, critical thinking is something that it's a must. Otherwise, you get into different situations where people, are even afraid, scared about, the complexity, the potential of AI, the fact that we're not going to be able to control it, to be the pilots. So it will generate different issues, but I think critical thinking is the answer here.
There's another question.
Coming. Sure.
Yes, please.
I wanted to continue from the question that a colleague just asked right now to maybe one step again inside of the question. There were studies in the US looking at the impact of digital literacy, improvement of digital literacy in the modern populations on empathy. And it was, we were discussing it just yesterday in the workshop, in the coffee break, that empathy goes down as digital literacy goes up. Because we are now accessing so much digital information that could be harmful for our emotions, for our psychological well-being also. And we see lots of disasters, we see blood, we see tragedies. In 5 minutes, we can see a lot of that we